Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News for this Wednesday, August 29. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. A manhunt is on for a man accused of chopping a woman and her 10-year-old son to death in Linton Park, St. Anne last night. The deceased have been identified as 32-year-old Alicia Francis and 10-year-old Jamani Jackson. 41-year-old Orville Scarlett, otherwise called Bull, of a Watt Town address in the parish, is being sought in connection with the gruesome killing. He is being asked to turn himself in to the Brownstown or St. Anne's police by midday tomorrow. The incident, which occurred shortly after 9 o'clock, has left the woman's 12-year-old son battling for life. However, her daughter escaped unharmed. The brother of Miss Francis spoke with our news team.
If I feel myself from me know myself right now. Not even a drop, I drop no job yet. When I come here and see, when I down a yard and hear the news, I fling with all the phone yo. But if you see when a man kill a woman and picnic, a weak man that. You can't say a man and kill a woman and picnic.
Meanwhile, Crime Chief for the Parish Deputy Superintendent, Richard Hilton, is urging persons not to take matters in their own hands.
So far, we have not yet located in. We are here now speaking to members of the community who are very irate. So we're trying to convince them as best as possible to allow the police to take charge of the situation and not to take the law in their own hands. Pass on all the information to us, the police, and let us deal with the matter.
TVJ News has been informed that a man is being questioned in connection with the murder of 14-year-old Yetania Francis near her home in Arnett Gardens, St. Andrew. Arnett Gardens has been reeling since the murder of the Kingston Technical High School student. Yetania disappeared last Thursday evening after she left home to buy food at a nearby shop. Her nude, partially burnt body was found about 11:30 Friday morning. Meanwhile, there was a shooting in the Arnett Gardens community approximately 9:30 last night. It's understood that men armed with guns opened fire on a 27-year-old man who they believed carried out the gruesome attack on 14-year-old Yetania. The man was reportedly in his living room when the incident occurred. He received several gunshot wounds and is now undergoing treatment. A man who was arrested in connection with the murder of well-known Clarendon businessman Brandon Murray has been charged by the police. He is 27-year-old Christopher Chambers, also known as Chris, a bearer of Waltham Park Road in St. Andrew. He has been charged with conspiracy to murder. Mr. Chambers was apprehended earlier this month during a police operation in Kingston 10. Detectives are searching for other suspects. Mr. Murray, the proprietor of Murray's Jerk Center in Clarendon, was shot dead by gunmen at the Mayfair Hotel on West Kings House Road in St. Andrew on June 10. A senior cop last week told our news center that spent shells collected at the scene were also found at another murder scene, suggesting that Mr. Murray was shot by contract killers. Weeks after Prime Minister Andrew Holness said he would temporarily oversee the Science and Technology Ministry, the parliamentary opposition has grown impatient for a new minister to be named. The ministry was left without a cabinet minister after the resignation of Dr. Andrew Wheatley. Opposition spokesman on Science and Technology Julian Robinson says it's now time for the Prime Minister to appoint a new minister.
We are absolutely concerned that there has been no replacement for Andrew Wheatley, and we're coming on into the fourth week since his resignation from the cabinet. We reiterate that it is important for the Prime Minister to name someone because he simply does not have the time or the capacity to manage a portfolio effectively. It requires individual attention. There are a number of critical issues. For example, the status of the data protection legislation is one such issue. We also, for example, we don't know how the leadership of the Spectrum Management Authority is being dealt with. The chairman had resigned. We don't know who the new chairman is and how the board is being managed. And you have the telecoms industry, which is regulated by that ministry. So it's very important for the Prime Minister to put in place new leadership.
And the Director of Communications in the Office of the Prime Minister, Robert Morgan, says the appointment of a new Science and Technology Minister is still on the agenda. Mr. Morgan was speaking at this morning's post-cabinet press briefing.
When Minister Wheatley resigned, the Prime Minister said he will start a process of reviewing the boards and the ministry as well, and the governance structures. He has done that. He spent about 2 weeks meeting with all the boards, right? At his post-cabinet press briefing, he says that at his quarterly press briefing, he further articulated to the public that he continues his review. He won't be keeping oversight of the Ministry of Technology for long. I think it's only fair, in light of everything that has happened and has been said, that the Prime Minister be allowed, as the person with the authority, to do his review, and as he has committed to, in short order, to name a new minister.
Meanwhile, Press Secretary Naomi Francis said the process to appoint new boards is still underway. Many of the boards expired, and the chairman of the board of the Spectrum Management Authority resigned amidst controversy at the entity.
Those finalization of the boards have not yet been complete, and so there has not been an announcement on that. Once it is done, though, certainly the members of the public would hear, and of course, Cabinet has to ratify that, so it has not yet been complete.
Bank of Jamaica Governor Brian Winter has again addressed concerns about the 4 to 6% inflation target. The target, which was set out in the standby agreement with the International Monetary Fund, is higher than many of Jamaica's trading partners. Mr. Winter noted that if the inflation rate was to be reduced to about 2 to 3%, citizens would have to bear more pressure.
That means either more taxes, more expenditure cuts, so fiscal has to be stronger even than the 7% primary surplus we have now, and or interest rates have to be higher or not lower. You don't cut interest rates. So, you know, there are trade-offs, in other words, there are costs, and it's appropriate for a government to balance all of those costs, taking advice from everybody, including the Monetary Authority, and then to make a determination.
The government says it has increased financial support to the education sector to improve the academic performance of students. State Minister in the Education Ministry, Floyd Green, made the announcement during the Victoria Mutual Building Society's Scholarship Awards ceremony recently.
We have moved, for example, in our primary schools, we used to give $850 per child for school operations. We've moved that to $2,500 per child for every school across the length and breadth of Jamaica. At the secondary level, we used to give $11,500 per child for school operations. We've moved that to $19,500 per child for every school across the length and breadth of Jamaica.
He also announced an increase in the funding for the school feeding program.
We're only feeding children three times for the week. We put $2 billion into that system so that we could feed our children at least 5 times every day of the week, so that that would not be a hindrance to them learning. So we really have been putting much more resources into education to try and create that excellence. But excellence is not just about putting the money in. The reality is that what we have recognized, we have to completely reform our educational system if we are to get excellence.
Time now for a look at what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
The Health Report, we look at preparing your child or children mentally for school.
Playing board games as a family for an hour, half an hour each day after school, get their brains relaxed. A lot of parents tend to want the kids to hit the ground running, so they start off at school and then they're expected to start bookwork right through the night until they go to bed, but that really doesn't help, and it really doesn't get the child to use their brains in the most efficient way. You need playtime, you need relaxation time.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's healthy living tip. Send your child to bed early, at least 1 week before school reopens. Encourage your child to do preliminary reading before the new academic year begins. And spend time talking to your child or children about adapting into a new environment.
In news overseas, after facing scrutiny for hush money payments to a porn star and a former Playboy model, U.S. President Donald Trump pleaded with evangelical leaders for political help during closed-door remarks on Monday. President Trump warned the evangelical leaders of dire consequences to their congregations should Republicans lose in November's midterm elections. More from the CNN.
President Trump is warning of violence if Republicans lose the midterm elections and Democrats take over up on Capitol Hill. Speaking last night before evangelical leaders at a dinner over at the White House, the president said, and I'm quoting now from the recording that CNN has heard, "I think we're popular, but there's a real question as to whether people are going to vote if I'm not on the ballot, and I'm not on the ballot. A lot of people think I don't like Congress. People say I'm not voting because the president doesn't like Congress. It's not a question of like or dislike. It's a question that they will overturn everything that we've done, and they will do it quickly and violently. And violently." The president said, "There is violence," his words. "When you look at Antifa, these are violent people," he continues. "You have tremendous power. You were saying in this room, you have people who preach to almost 200 million people, depending on which Sunday we're talking about," close quote. That from the president. Let's get some insight from our political, legal, and law enforcement analysts. Jackie Kucinich, pretty strong words from the president predicting violence if the Democrats take control, the majority in the House of Representatives.
Well, he certainly isn't the first person to scare people to the polls. And if he's asking these reverends and whatnot to do that, it's irresponsible to say that there's going to be violence if Democrats take over.
And in sports, the Guyana Amazon Warriors pulled off a 4-wicket win over the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots to move to second on the Caribbean Premier League. Needing 169 runs to win, the Warriors achieved victory with one delivery to spare. Sahel Tanvir led the Warriors charge with an unbeaten 37, while Jason Mohammed got 36. Carlos Brathwaite and Ben Cutting both ended with 2 wickets each for the Patriots. Earlier, the Patriots, batting first, posted 168 for 7 from their 20 overs. Jamaican Chris Gayle top-scored with 40, while Anton Devkich chipped in with 35 and Evan Lewis 28. South Africa, Imran Tahir bagged 4 for 42 for the Warriors. The Jamaica Talawas will play the Barbados Tridents tonight at 7. Still in sports, Chris Binney's historic run at the Pan American Squash Championship continued on Tuesday night as the Jamaican booked his place in the men's singles final set for tonight. Binney, who became the first Jamaican to reach the semi-final stage at the championship, fought from 2 sets down to beat American Chris Hansen 3-2. The American quickly grabbed the first 2 sets 11-3, 11-5 and looked close to out the contest, but Binney rallied to take the third set 14-12. The Jamaican then claimed the next 2 sets 11-1, 11-8 to set up a meeting with number 1 ranked Deja Ilias of Peru tonight at 8:15. And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.